Portland is known throughout the world as the Rose City. But to the competitors on the world's richest sports car series, Portland is Championship City. For 11 straight years, the winner at Portland has gone on to claim the IMSA Camel GT Championship. Stay tuned and see if history repeats itself today, live on ESPN. ESPN, celebrating its 10th year as the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. It's a beautiful day at Portland, Oregon, America's Rose City. Temperatures expected to reach into the mid-80s, high fluffy clouds and a light breeze. Perfect weather for prototype sports car racing. Hello, everyone. I'm Bob Barsha, welcoming you to Portland International Raceway and round 10 of the IMSA Camel GT Championship for 1989. There is no more important race than the G.I. Joe's Grand Prix here at Portland, because for the last 11 years, no man has won the Camel GT Championship and its $150,000 bonus without winning Portland. With me to analyze today's race, veteran IMSA runner Doc Bundy, who once finished second here driving for Bob Tullius's Jaguar team. And Doc, it's been all Nissan up to this point. 7 out of 9 races thus far this year, but now Jaguar has broken their hold on the pole and could be a threat today.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Jaguar seems to be coming out of that shell. We've been waiting for him all year to take over and win some races and be a real threat in the championship. With the new turbo, they're showing speed, and they seem to have gotten over that tire problem they've been having up to this point.
But the race is being run on a hot day, and this track is notorious for getting slippery as the day goes on. How's that likely to affect it?
Well, that again will pose that question about tires. Are they ready for the tires? Are the tires ready for this track? We'll see today.
It has been Nissan on the pole for the last 3 years here at Portland, but that all changed today. Here's Rick DeBrule with our surprise pole sitter.
I have Jan Lammers here. Jan, you've got the pole. What's this going to do for you? This is the first time you must be happy.
Oh, well, I've been happy most of the last 33 years. But race technical, of course, we're very happy. We hope that this is a change point in the season where we can try and start to beat them more often. But we still have to win the first race of the year yet. So it's only words. We have to produce some action now.
This is the first time you've been really competitive, though, this year with the V6, isn't it?
That's right, and we're pleased with the progress. But like I say, we got to produce action now and not words.
Thank you, Jan. Now to Rick DeBrule.
Well, you know, last year Jeff Brabham arrived at this particular race with a big winning streak on the line. There was a lot of pressure associated with that. This year, the winning streak is not quite the same, and as a result, the pressure is not quite as stiff. He's sitting here about ready to put on his helmet. Is it easier not having the pressure that you had when you came here last year?
A little bit, but there's still a lot of pressure involved because this is a really critical race for us to finish because of the championship. And, you know, we just got to try and do our job, and obviously the Jaguars are going to give us a hard run today, but hopefully we'll put on a good race for everybody.
Is it a major relief knowing that whenever you get in the car, it's going to be competitive? You don't have to worry about finishing races. You just have to worry about winning.
Well, I always worry about finishing races. You know, the guys just do a great job, and it makes it seem we do finish all the time. But, you know, these cars are very complicated, and the electromotive crew have just done an outstanding job. And for you to even say that shows credit what they've done.
You did have a rear wing, though, come off during practice. Is that a simple problem, or was it something you have to look at?
No, it was just wasn't done up properly, and, you know, that's been corrected. So I don't foresee that happening, at least I hope not, anyway.
Jeff Brabham, optimistic, now getting into the car for the start of the race here at Portland International Raceway.
Thank you, Rick, and certainly Kathleen is a whole lot prettier than you are. Good to hear from her first. The course is 1.9 miles around. Portland is the kingmaker among IMSA tracks. Here's Doc Bundy to give us a closer look.
Here we are going down the long, wide straightaway at Portland International Raceway, where we'll reach speeds of 180 miles an hour going into turn 1, which is a popular place to pass on the right here. Braking, dropping down third gear through 1 and 1A, letting her drift out, setting up for 2, drop her down to second gear, a late apex. This will get slippery. Accelerate over to 3. 3 and 4, we become very slippery in the race. Accelerate off, up to 3rd. We can try a late braking maneuver here on the right, going into 5. Late apex, accelerate the car off, up to 3rd gear, then 4th gear, 5th gear, going down the long back straightaway, where again we'll reach speeds of nearly 160 mile an hour. There's an out-braking maneuver here at the end of the straightaway, but it's blind on the left. You have to be very careful. This is 4th gear, then 3rd gear through 8. Accelerate, brake again for turn 9. Again, a very slippery corner as the race goes on. Let her drift out to the wall, accelerate up to 3rd, 4th, and 5th as start-finish.
Thank you, one and all. Portland, Oregon is our site today, home of the Washington Park Rose Test Center, where they grow new strains of the world's most romantic flower every year, thus earning Portland the name the Rose City. ESPN Speed World coverage of the G.I. Joe's Camel Grand Prix is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will. By Dunlop High Performance Tires. Dunlop outperforms. By Volkswagen. Cars at an honest value for over 40 years. And by Busch Beer. The beer with a taste as smooth as its name. The world's fastest sports cars ready to toe the line at Portland International Raceway, and we'll be back to turn them loose after this. Back at Portland, Oregon, Bob Barcia, Doc Bundy, Rick DeBrule, and Kathleen Hessert with you as engines have now fired among the 24 cars who will go to the line to contest the G.I. Joe's Camel Grand Prix in just a matter of moments. With that, let's take a look at the way they'll line up for this 300-kilometer event. On the pole, not a record, but very close. Jan Lammers out of the Netherlands will be sharing the Jaguar XJR10 Turbo V6 with Price Cobb out of Evergreen, Colorado. Outside on the front row will be Jeff Brabham, the man who has won 7 of 9 events coming in this year. He'll be driving solo in the Nissan GT-PC XT. Inside row 2, his teammate, Chip Robinson, who will be running interference for his teammate, Jeff Brabham, throughout the day. Next to him will be Bob Wallach in the Miller-sponsored Porsche 962 twin-turbo water-cooled Porsche. Will be sharing with young John Andretti. Inside row 3 will be John Nielsen from Denmark, sharing the normally aspirated 12-cylinder Jaguar with Davy Jones from Cortland, New York. Next to them will be the Toyota Eagle, out-qualifying the faster Group C Toyota. Willie T. Ribbs will be at the keyboard to start, and he'll be followed by IndyCar veteran Rocky Moran. Inside row 4 will be Kostas Los, the Greek driver out of England, going solo in the Pontiac Spice. And next to him, Drake Olson in the Toyota Group C car to be sharing with Juan Manuel Fangio II. On row 5, Jim Miller in the normally aspirated Spice with Chevrolet V8 power. He'll be sharing during the day with Bob Earl. And next to them will be Jochen Maas in the twin-turbo Bayside Haviland-sponsored Porsche 962C. Dominic Dobson will be standing by if needed, but I doubt it. Remember, Maas is the 24 Hours of Le Mans winner. Back further in the field on row 6 will be Gianpiero Moretti going solo in a twin-turbo Porsche. Next to him will be John Hotchkiss and Jim Adams in a Porsche 962, and that is an air-cooled car. On row 7 will be Bruce Levin driving his air-cooled Porsche 962, sharing with Dominic Dobson. Next to what was scheduled to be a 3rd Jaguar in this field, but they did not make the grid. So that will move up the pole sitter in our Camel Lights class. Scott Schubert sharing with his lady Linda Ludeman in a Buick-powered Spice. Next to them will be Tom Hessert and Charlie Morgan sharing with Jan Tyndall in a Buick-powered car, fielded by the Essex Racing Team out of Georgia. Inside row 9 will be Ferdinand de Lesseps and Jay Cochran in a Pontiac Spice. Next to the 2nd Hessert-Morgan-Tyndall machine. On row 10 will be Frank Everett and Parker Johnstone sharing a Pontiac Spice. Next to Jim Downing and Howard Katz in a Mazda-powered Argo. Row 11 will be David Roca and Nicky Lutweiler of Switzerland in a Pontiac Fiero. Dan Marvin also scheduled there. Next to Ken Knott and Hendrik Tenkati of Belgium in a Pontiac Firebird. And the final row, row 12, will be Don Bell making his first appearance of the year on the Camel GT Series. Next to George Sutcliffe in a Pontiac Firebird. Next to them will be Al Lopez and David Roca in a Chevy-powered Tiga. We have one more pace lap to go. We'll take a quick commercial time out and be back to Portland for the start of the G.I. Joe's Camel Grand Prix after this. miles up behind the Nissan pace car here at Portland International Raceway. You're watching live, and what a start this should be. Jan Lammers, absolutely fearless in the turbocharged V6 Jaguar next to Jeff Brabham, who has won more Camel GT races in the last 2 years than any other man. At the green flag, look at the Jaguar down low, and look at the Toyota bumping with the Jaguar behind. Jeff Brabham is now holding up some of the traffic behind him. Jan Lammers streaks away. Will it be Brabham taking second? It looks like it will. A very eventful start. Quickly, Lammers with a big lead, and it looks like Chip Robinson, the 84 Nissan there, got over on the lime. Now, Portland has been repaved since the recent kart IndyCar race, and they had a layer of lime put down to soak up extra water. Number 98 Toyota has spun. I can't believe nobody's going to hit him. Oh, but no one does. Well, it's not elegant, but they're getting it done without any mechanical carnage, it looks like. Jean-Pierre Moretti, the last one to get by, but the 99 Toyota there being driven by Willie T. Ribbs. And what a break it is for these guys. With traffic behind them snarled, Jan Lammers and Jeff Brabham absolutely sprint away from the field as if they needed an advantage like that, Doc.
Absolutely. It looks here like Willie just gets in a little bit too hot. Yep, got in a little bit too hot, and she come around on him. That's too bad. He had an excellent start for the race.
And he had an excellent qualifying run. This has been typically the slower of the two Toyota GTP cars thus far this year. This is a totally new car built by Dan Gurney's All-American Racers. They broke it at Watkins Glen, crashing hard, did Willie T. Ribbs. They broke once again at Road America in the most recent race just a couple of weeks ago, but they qualified well up in the field, out-qualified their team car, the Group C machine that has taken a couple of poles on the Camel GT Series this year, but now they are going to have a real tough road to hoe from further back in the field. Meanwhile, this is the car everybody's been talking about. Qualified at 56.45 seconds, not quite a record, but that is after setting a lap mark at 55.4 seconds in the cool of yesterday's second practice. There is the man, Jan Lammers, 33 years of age, from Holland, where he learned his race driving skills as an instructor in the racing school, the Skid School, at Zandvoort, Holland.
This Jaguar is just really got some power. They finally got the thing working, and you know, if it holds together and they do have the right tire combination for today, they're going to be awfully tough.
I think he hit it right on the head, Doc. Tires, they exploded one at Watkins Glen here on ESPN just about 4 weeks ago on the July 4th weekend, and it cost them a whole lot of body work. And Lammers told me afterward that's the worst near wreck he's ever been through. We are on board now with Jeff Brabham. Notice the dashboard and the turbo boost gauge dialing up and down as he goes through the gears, gets on and off the gas. Let's listen to the sound of this V6 turbocharged Nissan.
You notice when he's against those curbs how much it's working his arms. You touch those curbs with those wide front tires, and it feeds all that information back through those arms.
Car off. Car number 12 is off the racetrack. That's Al Roca from Westlake Village, California, in a Chevy-powered Tiger running in the Camel Lights class. Tough break for him. Doesn't look like there was anybody behind him to hit him, fortunately. And he's back underway, looks like without incident. Well, there was someone behind him. Looked like one of the Whitehall Motorsports Lights machines. I think that's the 79 car. And that was going to be started by Ferdinand de Lesseps, a Parisian. But no harm, no foul.
It's that tricky turn 3 section. That section we said it's so slippery. We'll see a lot of action back in that turns 3 through 5 today.
There's the gap, first to second. Jan Lammers back to the turbocharged Nissan. For a while, everyone said you couldn't compete with a turbo car, so the Tom Walkinshaw Racing Team went out and built themselves one. They now run both a turbocharged and a normally aspirated car. Let's get a comment from Rick DeBrule in the pit lane.
Well, you know, originally they were only supposed to be running 2 Jaguars in this particular race, but during the morning warm-up, they had the third car, the number 66 car. Price Cobb went out and drove it, said it did so well during the warm-up, why let it sit in the back? So as a result of that, they gave it to Davy Jones. He is starting that. What that means is Price Cobb now has 3 different cars he can jump into to try and score points for. Jaguar, on the other hand, can only score their team, the manufacturer points, off of one of those cars.
There is your leader, Jan Lammers, making his way around in first place. And Jeff Brabham told me before the race, this is the car he fears most. Sounds odd to hear Jeff Brabham say he's worried about anybody on the Camel GT circuit. He's won 16 of the last 21 races and 7 out of 9 this year alone. He is the defending champion out of Noblesville, Indiana. That last lap gone by at an average of 114 miles an hour. Brabham closing in now on Lammers.
Yeah, well, here again, it may be these tires, Bob, that you know, the Dunlops were good for the first few laps, but now that they're settled into their pace, they may not have quite that advantage.
Now, because this race is only 300 kilometers, we expect it to be one pit stop. That means you get one chance to get fresh rubber on your car, and that means you really need to shepherd your tires. If you take 2 stops, the way the races have been going on the Camel GT circuit this year, you're going to wind up losing. So 1 stop is all you get. Make the most of your tires while you've got them under you. There is Brabham, sent from Noblesville, Indiana, of course, as the son of triple World Formula One champion Blackjack Brabham. Jeff is a native of Australia. He has homes both in Noblesville, Indiana, and down in Delray Beach, Florida, where he spends his winter times. And right now, he has got it down to less than a car length over Lammers. We may see a pass on this straightaway. This is the drag strip portion of Portland International Raceway, 3,500 feet long, nice and wide, as you can see. The Lammers goes way over off the line there. Big tactical drift.
That was just in order to try and break any draft the Nissan might grab on him.
And it worked perfectly. You see, they got a slower car in between them. Brabham really had to get on the binders hard.
Also, Jan just took a little bit too hot into one. You saw he got out into that white line, and had he gone any faster or any deeper, he may have gotten himself off the racetrack.
I think that's Don Bell making his return to the Camel GT Series this year. He was a stalwart in the lights class in years past, but Brabham gets by him fairly easily, and now he's got to do it all over again. Lammers has got about a full second lead on him. Down the backstretch they go, reaching upwards of 180 miles an hour, and through traffic they slice. You can see how narrow it is at that part of the racetrack.
Absolutely, and that pass that Jeff just made is a very dangerous pass, because in the prototype you sit on the right side of the car. That whole left side is a blind area, so you have to be extremely careful when you pass another prototype on the left.
On the far left of your picture is the identical Nissan. That is being driven by Chip Robinson, who trails his teammate by 4 in the points chase. We'll be back for more of Camel GT Racing. It's the G.I. Joe's Grand Prix from Portland. Stay with us. For a while, it appeared that Jaguar drivers Bryce Cobb and John Nielsen might win the war while losing every battle. Through the first 7 races of this IMSA season, Cobb and Nielsen finished second 6 times and held the lead in the Camel GT Championship. Then on Independence Day weekend in Watkins Glen, New York, the British cars suffered their Waterloo, or perhaps their Yorktown. In the opening laps of the race, Davy Jones and his non-turbocharged 12-cylinder Jaguar fell out with a broken drive shaft, followed not long after by the new turbocharged Jag when a tire exploded under Jan Lammers. Without ever sitting in their cars, Cobb and Nielsen were prevented from scoring any points. Nissan rolled into victory lane, lifting drivers Jeff Brabham and Chip Robinson past the Jaguar duo in the title standings. 2 weeks later in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, Cobb teamed with Lammers to finish second yet again to the Nissan. For a team with roots in the last 2 sports car world championships, the bridesmaids' role in America is wearing thin.
The whole casserole program's coming together. You know, there's no doubt in my mind that the car's a winner. We got to make it win soon enough.
History argues that Jaguar must win today. The Camel GT title has never been clinched without at least 1 race victory, and in the past 11 years, the eventual champion has always won in Portland. And you ask every driver out here whether he thinks that superstition will hold. In fact, that historical fact will hold. And they all say, well, I'm not superstitious, but I'm doing everything I can to win this one because the championship always goes to the Portland winner. There you see the leader, Jan Lammers, and there you see the car Rick DeBrule talked about. That's the number 66 machine, an identical turbo car. It was built to be a test car for the Jaguar team, but as Rick pointed out, Bryce Cobb got in it this morning and said, hey, why not start it? Oh, it's Jones that drove that car. Well, that's good news. I was about to say if Price Cobb started that car, he would not be able to score points in any other car. And points are all that matters out here. As you watch Jeff Brabham now closing in on Jan Lammers once again. Brabham leads the points chase with 151 to his teammate Chip Robinson's 147. Behind them, Price Cobb has 127, and John Nielsen, his Jaguar teammate, 124. They led it despite, as you just heard, finishing second in most of the races to date, and they desperately need a victory if they are going to win the championship, presently held by this man, Jeff Brabham. Down the back stretch they go on Dunlop tires, as opposed to the Goodyears that you'll find on the Nissan trying to run him down from behind. Jan Lammers with IndyCar and Formula One experience. In fact, Lammers, your leader, drove for Dan Gurney's Eagle team just a few years ago in IndyCars. Let's get a comment from Rick DeBrule in the pit.
Oh, we thought we were going to be seeing 3 Jaguars out there today. The number 66 car went out, raced for a while, and then pulled back in. Tony Dow is the team manager. Why?
Basically, if there had been any problem in the first 2 or 3 laps, we needed a 3rd car out so that our championship runner Price Cobb would be able to then get in a spare car. As that situation didn't arise, there's no need to put miles on a race car that you don't need to put it on. Our workload's heavy enough as it is, you know.
Why not just leave it out there, though, on that chance that one of the other 2 cars may drop out later?
Well, as I said, the workload is heavy enough. Kansas is 2 weeks' time. Takes 4 days to drive back to Valparaiso, where our base is, and then 3 days to get there. So you don't want to wear a racing car out that you don't need to. It's an insurance policy.
Tony Dow taking out insurance here in Portland.
And well, he should. Topeka, Kansas, the next stop on the IMSA Camel GT circuit, coming up in just a couple of weeks, as Tony said. Life on the road means you conserve your machinery. They're not panicking in the Jaguar camp, but they also know that no Camel GT championship has ever been won without a victory. So they need to get one soon. In fact, the Jaguar team also had news. They have re-signed Price Cobb to drive with them again for the 1990 season, giving them both Davy Jones and Price in the driver's seat, and they desperately want good American drivers on that team. There's the number 67 Porsche, and this is what the view is like for Bob Wallach from Strasbourg, France, one of the finest Porsche drivers in the world. Those of you who saw our coverage of the 24 Hours of Le Mans earlier this year saw Hans Stuck and Bob Wallach, who led that race for something like 8 hours and were always in the hunt until they came up short. And it's been 19 years that Bob Wallach's been trying. Let's listen to the sound of the Porsche. What is that chirping sound, Doc? Why don't you explain that for our listeners?
You can hear the turbo whine and the chirping. The chirping is the wastegates closing and for an instant, the stall of the turbo itself.
There you hear it, that sound. That is the wastegate closing on the turbo as he lifts up. Now, this is one of the new twin-turbo water-cooled Porsches, and Bob says one of the nice things about it is that when he lifts, the engine doesn't drop off as precipitously, and he doesn't lose the RPM that he needs. Wallach presently running in 4th position on the racetrack. Lammers is your leader, followed by Brabham, Chip Robinson in the 2nd Nissan. Bob Wallach is in 4th in the Porsche, followed by Bob Earl in the Chevy Spice, a normally aspirated car running up there in turn 5, and that's good news. Here comes a stream of leaders. The Jaguar flashing his headlights at one of the slower Camel Lights cars ahead of him, saying, "I'm coming through, stay over."
You know, the P drivers like to complain about the lights being so much slower, but believe me, every one of the P drivers use those light cars as blockers to separate them from the other GDP cars.
Second year for the Castrol-sponsored Jaguars here on the IMSA Camel GT Series. They have been well received everywhere they go. The cars themselves, absolutely immaculate. Tony Dow and the boys in Valparaiso, Indiana, have these cars, all 3 of them, and they bring 3 to most races to give their drivers as much track time as possible. They are absolutely beautiful race cars, and I think they've probably taken the standard of construction up a notch in Camel GT racing. working the traffic as Jan Lammers coming at you with headlights on. Behind him, the Nissan of Jeff Brabham has 2 cars in between. Now, we mentioned the fact that the championship is what everybody is shooting for here in the Camel GT Series. And we asked Jan whether the championship race is more important than taking an individual checkered flag for the Jaguar team.
We want to win one race. It's a championship, obviously, and how we're going to do that, we don't know yet. But it doesn't matter. We just hope that the answers come along as the season progresses. We still are very happy that we've been able to finish high enough to stay in the race for the championship. But we were hoping to make a turn point here where we could win our first race.
And they may well get that first victory today, and it'd be ironic that it would come at the hands of this turbo car, possibly. Jaguar, of course, stalwart campaigners of 12-cylinder horsepower based on the production 12-cylinder engine in their street cars. Finally, Tom Walkinshaw said, I guess I've got to have a turbo to run well in this series, and now he's got one.
I think he's just taking the turbo as an investment for the future.
There is your leader in the Camel Lights class. That is the Buick-powered Spice being driven by Scott Schubot out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What an up-and-down season he's had. When he's not winning, the car is braking and throwing him out of the race. Right now, Schubot stands in 3rd in Camel Lights points. First is Charles Morgan with 138. Second, Tom Hessert with 133. Third is Scott Schubot with 116. And that on the basis of 5 victories thus far in 1989. Let's go down to Rick DeBrule.
Oh, Bob, you were talking about the frustrating year that Scott Schubot is having. They've gone to a real high-tech device this race to try and change that. In their paddock area, they have a horseshoe hanging over the car, hanging the right side up, to try and change that luck. Staying now with Linda Ludeman, it has been a frustrating year, hasn't it?
Yes, we've been leading in about 5 races when we've had the engine go sour or some sort of electronic problem happen. And so we're resorting to high-tech devices now. The lady that takes care of our cats gave us a horseshoe off of her horse because she said it would bring us good luck. So we've had it hanging over the engine all weekend, and so far, knock on wood, it's been doing its job.
Does that wear the team down, though, when you've got a different problem that knocks you out of those races?
Oh, it's really frustrating. It's hard to keep the morale up because you get so excited because you're leading the race, and then all of a sudden, all your work for the whole weekend is for nothing.
We'll find out soon whether that horseshoe works.
We should also point out Linda Ludeman carries a toy baseball bat around with her. She calls it her shoe bat. In the event Scott doesn't want to get out of the car and get her in, she can use it on him. But Scott has 3 times this year performed solo, has driven the entire race by himself, and has won. 3 of his 4 victories have come by driving solo throughout the race. But when he hasn't won, he's finished 5th, 6th, 10th, 5th, and 7th. And that is why Scott Schubot finds himself in 3rd place. Back inside with Jeff Brabham, just a day at the office.
You see the boost gauge going up as he goes down the straightaway. And then it drops off as he's off power. It'll snap back up as he puts his foot back in the gas. I think this cable laying across here, across his chest, is probably the cool hat.
That would be the skull cap that the driver wears, through which ice water is circulated in order to keep his head cool. Jeff Brabham may also be wearing a vest on his chest and shoulders, through which the water also circulates to keep him cool.
You notice the Nissan dashboard has a lot more instruments and gauges and switches on it than, say, the Porsche when we rode with Wally. Nissan likes to have a lot more information passed back to them. Now here we see the Porsche. It's a lot more simple. We just don't have a lot of gauges to look at. And I think probably the reason for that is the drivers really don't look at the gauges all that much. Occasionally, on the straightaway, if you're not busy, you'll look down and see what RPM you're turning, or maybe look over at the oil pressure gauge or the oil temperature gauge. That's it.
That was Bob Wallach passing Scott Schubot, your Camel Lights leader. So the Lights leader has been lapped by the leaders in the big GTB class, running about 400 horsepower as opposed to the 700 horsepower or more you'll find in the big front runners. We'll be back to Portland. We're back at Portland International Raceway in Portland, Oregon, and you see the top cars in the G.I. Joe's Camel Grand Prix. At the center of your picture, the green, red, and white Jaguar being driven by Jan Lammers. Just one car length back, the number 83 Nissan being driven by the defending Camel GT champion Jeff Brabham, who looked like he had a notion at the head of the straightaway. Now this is where he needs to be. He needs to get right up behind. Lammers goes way to the outside to break the draft again. And I mean way to the outside. This track narrows down. He's got to get back over, and he does.
Sometimes I think that's just a waste of effort.
I wonder if he wanted to get closer to the pit wall, maybe, so he could take a cup of water out of a crewman's hand or something. He was that close.
Now this presents a little problem for Jeff with the Momo car right there in front of him. It will separate, it'll allow the Jaguar to separate from him just slightly.
Jean-Pierre Moretti driving that red and yellow, very striking number 30 Momo-sponsored Porsche. And that is a twin-turbo Porsche. That's the latest spec Porsche you can get your hands on, if you can get your hands on one, for probably a cool $500,000 or so. And so Moretti should be able, theoretically, to run with these guys. But Brabham, taking a close look, just ahead of the water-cooled twin-turbo number 30 Porsche is the air-cooled number 10 Wins machine being driven by Jim Adams. Chip Robinson ducks to the outside in the Nissan without headlights, and the one with the burners on is Jeff Brabham. Here is the Toyota in Group C specification. This is Drake Olson, who has taken 2 poles in this car already this year, but the problem has been developing the car to last race distance. Now, in today's 300-kilometer event, reliability may not be a problem, and Drake could be a factor in this car.
Right now they're sitting in 6th place. In 5th place, as you can see, the Jim Miller car is right in front of him. He's closed up on him a little bit. You know, what I'm a little surprised here, Bob, is that the Toyota isn't showing the speed it has a little bit earlier in the season. I wonder if they may just be attacking that reliability problem and holding back in the early stages of this race.
Well, this is a 2.1-liter engine, the smallest you'll find in Camel GT racing, and as a result, they make up for a lack of cubic inches by turning up that turbocharger. Some people are estimating along the pit road that it's something in excess of 120 inches of mercury. I mean, that thing is cranked up. He is tighter than a banjo string, which explains a lot of his early speed. And you may be right, Doc. Maybe going through a few turbochargers, they decided to crank it down a little bit, see if they can't get the car to last the distance and let attrition work for them. Usually it is this car that out-qualifies its newer Eagle All-American Racers teammate, but this time it was the newer Eagle being driven by Willie T. Ribbs that qualified up in 6th position, and the Olson car back in 8th. And he goes by, does Drake Olson, taking on the Bob Earl Jim Miller Chevy, normally aspirated Spice car. So move Drake Olson up into the 5th spot, and move the Miller Earl car down into 6th. Gurney's All-American Racers really have their hands full. They've got 2 very, very different GTP cars, and they are campaigning both this year. So what Gurney has done is established 2 semi-independent teams who compete essentially against each other. Virtually the only thing the 2 cars share in common is their tires and the engine, and so they compete against one another both in qualifying and on the racetrack to see who can get their combination to work better. Watch Drake Olson making his way around. Let's learn a little bit more about the Gurney Toyota team with this look at Camel GT contenders. It's been said that running a 2-car race team is twice the work and half the fun, and that's when you have 2 of the same cars. Consider then what life is like for Dan Gurney and his All-American Racers Toyota team, running 2 very different cars. Number 98 is an older machine modified for IMSA racing from its original European Group C specifications. Number 99, on the other hand, was designed and built from the ground up in Gurney's famed All-American Racers shops in California. Just about the only parts the 2 cars have in common are their tires and their engines, a modified version of Toyota's 4-cylinder turbocharged street car engine. The more fully sorted Group C car has been the better performer thus far in 1989, winning several poles and running up front, most recently at Watkins Glen on July 4th weekend in the hands of Drake Olson and Juan Fangio, where a bungled pit stop may have cost the team its first victory. In that same race, the 99 car, carrying Gurney's legendary Eagle name, broke a wheel and crashed under Willie T. Ribbs. The new car has yet to finish a race in '89, and Ribbs knows just how far off the light at the end of the Toyota tunnel appears at mid-season.
You remember the movie The Great Escape? Well, right now, we're not seeing any light. We're underneath. We're still 10 foot under, and we're digging.
And digging they are. Meanwhile, also digging is Bob Wallach, who now has one of those Toyotas in his mirror. This is the battle for fourth place on the racetrack. Wallach in fourth, Drake Olson in fifth, and Olson slowly reeling him in. Meanwhile, Jochen Mass in the number 86 Porsche made a quick stop for a mechanical problem, got it solved, got back on the racetrack, but he is running way out of the top 10 at this point.
Yeah, his mechanical problem was missing a wheel.
That's about as mechanical as I get, Doc.
Absolutely. And it does drive a lot better on 4 than it does 3, as we've seen earlier today.
I'm sure we'll see Jochen Mass back in it before the day is done here at Portland. Somebody kicks up a little bit of dust as Bob Wallach and Drake Olson make a high-speed pass. Olson with finishes in 17th, 4th, 11th, 7th, 3rd, 10th, 7th, 3rd, and 5th. Has 43 points this season. He is 9th in the Camel GTP Drivers' Championship. Right now, he's 5th on the racetrack. Back at Portland International Raceway, live here on ESPN, where Bob Wallach has now been passed by Drake Olson, so put Olson into 4th position in the Dan Gurney-built Toyota, and drop Wallach back into 5th. There you see Wallach to the right of your screen in the Miller-sponsored Porsche. He shares with John Andretti. Drake Olson will give way later on in the race, and here's what it looked like. Olson way over on the left. Nice to have this much racetrack to work with at Portland. Wallach unable to respond. Later on, Drake will give that Toyota over to Juan Manuel Fangio, nephew of the 5-time Formula One world champion, Juan Manuel Fangio first.
I think with the Miller team, they're still working out the aerodynamics with the twin-turbo car, and I think they feel there's a little bit of drag. I know they're not happy with the front downforce right now, and I think it's hurting them a little bit.
In fact, that is a German Super Cup car. It's a factory Porsche that was built to run to the Group C specs in Europe. It has different aerodynamic features, particularly the underbody. And I know Jim Busby and the crew are working hard to bring it up to INSA spec, and they think they'll get a whole lot more horsepower and a whole lot more speed out of it. Jan Lammers goes out of your picture to the right. This is Jeff Brabham.
Jeff seems to close back up when they get clear running room, when there's no traffic to deal with. And maybe that's just because Jan is being more aggressive in the traffic itself.
Boy, you've got to wonder about Jan Lammers. After this huge spin when the tire exploded underneath him at Watkins Glen, he said it was the worst he's ever been through. Now he's out here pressuring that car just as hard as ever, as though it never even happened.
Well, I can tell you from a driver's standpoint, you just throw that out of your head. You do not want to think about things like that happening, because they can, if you think about it or worry about it, then it'll predominate your thinking. You won't go as fast.
How often do you find somebody batting .778 for a single season? 7 out of 9 victories does it for Jeff Brabham. In fact, his career winning percentage is right up close to 500 as a result of 2 spectacular seasons driving the Nissan.
He has certainly won with this machine. That whole team has become one.
9 victories in 12 Camel GT starts and a championship last year, his 3rd major racing title. Jeff Brabham has come back with 7 victories in 9 races thus far this year, and that's after they choked down the turbo restrictor on this Nissan V6, allowing less and less air to get into the manifold. Still, they are quickest at just about every racetrack the Camel GT Series visits.
Here we are riding with Jeff. You notice how the steering wheel is always working. That's the beating, one of the beatings a GTP driver takes. Notice in the corners, look at his arms. That is just constantly beating back through your body.
With that kind of hand and arm strength, no surprise, Jeff Brabham is a terrific golfer as well, and it's one of his passions, as it seems to be for so many race drivers, and I know it is for you, Bundy.
Yeah, well, we picked that up partly to help our concentration, and partly as a relaxing sport.
The gap is stabilized between Jan Lammers and Jeff Brabham. They haven't been a whole lot further apart the whole race thus far. We We are barely a third of the way into the G.I. Joe's Camel Grand Prix of Portland, and it's a very, very delicate time tactically for these race drivers. Should we get a yellow flag now, these guys would all pit, and that would call up the necessity of another pit stop later on. Well, I say we'd all pit. Some of them might stay out just so they could do it on one stop. So we're on tippy toes right now, hoping that we don't get a yellow flag until we reach halfway. There is Jeff Brabham. As we mentioned earlier, the track conditions at Portland have been sort of antsy thus far this year with some breakup. Jeff was here driving for Danny Sullivan in an IndyCar race back in June. The big complaint then was the track service. We asked him, has it improved since?
Feels better than it did, back when we were with the Indy cars. Throughout Friday's practice, you could see where the track was starting to come apart, whereas now there's no sign of that. So hopefully they've done a good job this time, and keep our fingers crossed it'll be all right for this race.
And thus far it has been. You might notice the right front, make that the left front corner of that Nissan. You see that little bit of day glow if we get a good look at it as he goes around. It's a little Kilroy was here style cartoon character. Russ Barmels, there it is. Russ Barmels with the Nissan team has taken up the job of putting that little logo on the car, and he uses a different cartoon character every week. Meanwhile, the Miller Earl Chevy Spice goes underneath Bob Wallach, and I'm wondering whether that car of Bob's is entirely healthy. He now drops down into the 6th position, make it Jim Miller and Bob Earl in 5th, Andretti and Wallach in 6th. And Bob Wallach is slipping inexorably backwards through this field, Doc.
Yeah, and I just got a feel that it's the handling that's dropping back. You know, they run on a different tire than these other competitors on the BFG tire. In fact, they're the only one right now running BFGs, and maybe for some reason the BFGs have gone off slightly.
Well, they qualified at 57.338 seconds as opposed to the 56.45 was Lammers in the leading Jaguar.
You notice we're getting a flashing yellow over there on the left, and I'm not sure what that might be. It's been a while since I've been in these, and I've never been in the twin turbo, but that could be a fan warning light or something of that nature. It's coming on flashing in the corners itself.
Maybe getting a low oil light as the oil sloshes around in the holding tank. Bob Wallach is certainly losing ground, and I'm sure that car is not handling the way he'd like it to. Meanwhile, look how tight it is up front. There's Brabham. Now he goes down to the inside. He's going to hold the line with traffic ahead of him. Lammers going way out across the track and flashing the headlights to traffic ahead. Now Lammers is going to want to get Scott Schumacher's yellow Spice between himself and Jeff Brabham just as soon as he can. But right now, these guys might just as well have locked arms. Lammers and Brabham have been going at it since the very beginning of this race. Underneath Scott Schumacher they go. The leader in the Camel Lights class in this 2-for-1 race in Portland is the G.I. Joe's Camel Grand Prix, and we'll be back live to Portland in a moment. I drove in that one lap of America, so I hope you'll all be watching it. I certainly had a good time in it. I won't tell you where I finished. Your leader is Jan Lammers in the Jaguar. Going out of your screen to the right, there is Jeff Brabham, the defending Camel GT champion, who has not been able, it would seem, to close up on the turbocharged Jaguar, as they have run 1-2 since the very beginning of the race. Brabham able to close up in the corners when he is able to get clear track in front of him, as he will now that he disposes of some slower traffic. But it looks like that Jaguar just has plenty of low-end grunt when they get on that straightaway, Doc.
Yeah, that car has just got some top end. And, that's what a lot of people have suspected all along. But, looking back through the last 2 years, the Nissan didn't always have the highest trap speed. And they opted for downforce versus straight line speed, and I think the Jaguar may have a little bit better mix.
Ironically, one of the fastest cars on the racetrack, according to the radar guns this weekend in Portland, is Bob Wallach's Porsche 962, which is working his way backward through the field at this point and is right now running way back in 6th position. And speaking of racing, for those of you who weren't able to catch it earlier today, Bob Jenkins, David Hobbs, and John Bisignano covered the Grand Prix of Germany from Hockenheim, and it was certainly a great day for them. Let's take a look at some of the highlights. Hockenheim, West Germany, the scene, and a great day at the Hockenheim ring, one of the fastest circuits on the Formula One series. Of course, it was an all-McLaren front row once again, but look at the Ferrari coming up to the fore as cars spin off in every direction. Gerhard Berger blew a tire at high speed and got up into the air. Wait till you see this little incident. Off the racetrack he goes, and this is the guy who had such a tremendous crash at Imola earlier this year. He was able to get it stopped, and Gerhard Berger is all right. That was on lap 12. On lap 25, Emmanuel Perot had a little trouble and veered, watch this, right into the styrofoam barriers. Thank goodness they're not concrete, and it looks like he left the 6.9 spare. He didn't go back for another shot. And he turned out to be okay, although the guy on the scaffolding probably wondered whether he was going to have trouble or not. 2 laps to go. It is all McLaren. Prost leading. Senna gets by him. Prost having trouble with his car. Senna goes by, takes the victory, his 4th of the year, while Prost finished second to keep his points lead by 17 points over his teammate. There you see the results. Senna over Prost, followed by Mansell, Patrese, Piquet, and Warwick. Congratulations to Bob Jenkins, who went over there and stood in for me and did a great job. And I should say also, on behalf of all of us here at Speed World, our sympathies go out to David Hobbs, wife Margaret, and sons Guy, and his brother is escaped me right now. David's mother passed away last week, and any of you who saw the coverage of the Formula One race today know that David just did a terrific job at that race. So, David, we're all thinking about you today. Get on home real quick, and I'll see you in Budapest in a couple of weeks. Back at Portland, however, Jan Lammers remains your leader. There is Jeff Brabham running in 2nd place on the racetrack, as he has from the start of this race. Make your top 5. Jan Lammers in the Jaguar, Jeff Brabham, Chip Robinson in the 2nd team Nissan, Drake Olson in the Toyota Group C car, Jim Miller and Bob Earl in the Chevy Spice, followed by Bob Wallach's Porsche, Willie T. Ribbs in the Toyota Eagle, Costas Loos, John Nielsen, and James Adams. Let's go down to Rick DeBrule in the pits.
Well, Bob Wallach just came in. He has been going successively slower as the laps have been going by. Unfortunately, he has not been communicating with the team to tell him exactly what the problem is. The only thing they were able to get off the radio was that he was having some type of problem with his tires. Now, they've come in, they're changing all 4 tires. They have done a driver change. John Andretti is getting in the car, so he will be finishing out the race. The question is whether it is simply a problem with the tires or whether there's some other problem that was slowing Bob Wallach down.
Long pit stop out.
Looks like they're adding oil there. That's the oil port on the left side. And this is an interminable pit stop by IMSA standards. The clock continues to run, approaching a minute. Boy, it has been a rough year for the Busby team. Make that an up and down year. They have won the last 2 victories for Porsche at the 24 Hours of Daytona and at West Palm Beach, Florida. But since then, they have tried to get this new twin-turbo car online to make it work for them. And it has really been a struggle. They dropped out after blowing an engine back at Watkins Glen, and they had troubles at Road America. Let's go back down to Rick DeBrule, who's standing by with Jim Busby.
Well, and for Jim Busby, this has been a particularly frustrating situation. Unaware as to what the problem with the car was. Jim, what was the problem? Why the long tire?
I don't have the slightest idea at this point. We got a radio call that's something about tires. That's all I could make out. Apparently there was an oil problem. I don't know. I've got to check with the guys and see exactly what they did. It looked like they added some oil and changed the tires.
It's frustrating they weren't able to get the cap back on the oil filler.
Apparently that is the case. I was unable to see it from here, but it appeared that they were struggling with the cap.
Well, at Road America just a couple of weeks ago, Jim Busby's team was charging through the field, got up to the top 5, and they were stopped in the pits. IMSA made them fix a broken brake light switch, and Jim was, well, he was gentlemanly about it, but you could tell he was beside himself about it. He thought in a daylight race, when you're running close to the leaders, you shouldn't be stopped for a technicality like that. Nevertheless, rules are rules, and it just continues to the travail of the Busby Racing Miller Porsche team this year. Nevertheless, you couldn't drive with a faster Porsche driver. Bob Wallach, 6 times the European Porsche Cup champion. And as good a Porsche driver as you'll find. Here is your leader once again, Jan Lammers. And notice the discoloration following the wheel wells. They're using carbon fiber brake pads on this car. And when they start to dust, they get it everywhere. That's all that black just almost obscuring the numbers on the side of the car. You'll see it also on the Toyota being driven by Drake Olson.
They're great brakes, and the pads are super effective, but boy, they make a mess of the paint job. They're not a favorite of the crew to clean up after the race.
Now, you just saw there as Jan Lammers was coming up once again on Scott Schubert to lap the Camel Lights leader for the second time. Now let's go back down to the pit lane.
Oh, Bob Wallach just came in. What was the problem with the car?
Well, I had little grip, and we seem to be down on power, too. I don't know if we're carrying too much wing, but I couldn't keep up with it either. So as I became slower and slower, I decided to come in for tires and for John to drive, because it's about half the race. So
they were trying to put oil in the back. What was the reason for that?
Well, I think there was a misunderstanding between myself and the crew. When I asked to come in, if it was early enough, they understood they had an oil problem, so they put some oil in the engine, which wasn't necessary. But anyway, we're not in the hunt today, so it doesn't matter.
Especially after that pit stop. Bob Wallach.
Well, having said all those nice things about Bob Wallach, who I thought was driving the car, I didn't notice the driver change. We'll find a few nice things to say about John Andretti, and one of those is that he is on a lot of short lists for some IndyCar rides next year. He's going to finish out this season doing some running with Vince Granatelli's team, partnering Tom Sneva when his Camel GT commitments allow him. So he is a man with a big future. Mario Andretti's nephew, Michael's cousin. Quite a race driver in his own right. Finished second in a Group C Super Cup race over in Europe, driving the first effort by BFG in that series. Now there's the number 9 car, second in Camel Lights. Tom Hessert, who is trailing his teammate Charlie Morgan in the Camel Lights points, is the scheduled first driver in that car. Now, all of these cars will have to make a stop for their co-drivers. They are required to stop. Otherwise, the Lights cars could, most of them, go the entire distance without a stop. Speaking of Tom Hessert, his sister Kathleen is standing by in the pit lane.
Yes, reporter Kathleen Hessert standing here. Actually, Tom's been running second right now by about 9 seconds behind Scott Schubert. They're talking about bringing him in another 5 to 10 laps at the most, which means he has just surpassed the number of laps that have been necessary for him to get points for the championship. And remember, Tom is second in the championship to his teammate Charles Morgan, who is going to get in that car.
By a mere 5 points is Tom Hessert second to Charlie Morgan, and that is Morgan's car that he is driving. That is one of the new Spice machines running with V6 Buick power, and those cars are going to take off 100 pounds next year and get a little bit faster. IMSA is once again juggling the weight to displacement rules that govern all of these cars, many of which run with different chassis and engine combinations. And the way they are all equalized is according to the weight that each car is required to carry based on the displacement of the engine. For example, here is a 3-liter turbocharged car running at just over 2,100 pounds. And it is the turbos who will take the biggest beating next year. They will add weight to those cars, choke down their turbo restrictors a little bit in an effort to allow the normally aspirated cars to lighten up a little bit and get back into the hunt. And right now, with clear track, Jan Lammers has opened up a sizable gap over Jeff Brabham. There is the number 30 Momo car, Giampiero Moretti at the wheel, and here's Kathleen.
Yes, Jean-Pierre started from the beginning. He's going to do this race alone right now. They're changing the tires in there. He seems to be very relaxed inside that car. The team's working fast, the crew getting everything going, and they're fueling up as well. So other than that, we'll just have to wait and see. He looks ready to go again.
Talk about staying power. Giampiero Moretti, who owns the Momo road and steering wheel business that sponsors this car, his last victory in the Camel GT Series came November 30th, 1980, almost 9 years ago, at what used to be the season finale at Daytona Beach, Florida. Now that race is run at Del Mar, California, and if you checked it out last year here on ESPN, you remember what an exciting race it was. Martin Brundle and Jan Lammers came from the back to score a $145,000 victory, the biggest first-place purse in IMSA history. There is your leader, Jan Lammers, who probably still hasn't spent all the money he made then. Going by Bruce Levin in the normally aspirated and air-cooled Porsche. Jan Lammers remains your leader. The number 10 wins Porsche of Jim Adams in his sight. Jeff Brabham's run second. Nissan of Chip Robinson third. Back at Portland live here on ESPN. Bob Varsha and Doc Bundy with you. Rick DeBrule and Kathleen Hessert along pit road. And And about the only thing that's gone wrong for Jan Lammers on the number 60 Jaguar is he's missing one of his headlights. Down the curved backstretch at Portland International Raceway he goes. A 1.9-mile circuit, 6 right-hand turns, 3 left-hand turns, and all of the turns, according to the surveyors, a 175-degree radius. Your leader is in the pits, and Rick de Brule is there.
John Nielsen has come into the pits, the number 61 car. Davy Jones will be hopping into the car. Once again, they are doing this as a team race as opposed to the Nissans, which are going all alone. As a result, they have the driver change. It slows it down a little bit, but more importantly, it makes it a little more complicated. If you make a mistake during that driver change, if you drop a seatbelt, if you can't make that connection, it slows it down just a little bit more. Now, all the tires are on, the fuel is in, and they are away. Now they're getting ready for the next pit stop of Jan Lammers.
That will be the leader, Jan Lammers, of course. This is the normally aspirated 12-cylinder Jag, and this is one of the cars that will benefit from the new IMSA rules next year. They are allowed to take 100 pounds off this car. In fact, they can do it at this race, but I asked team manager Tony Dow, and he said they were only able to find about 70 that they could take off. He said we could get the other 30 off if we spend a whole lot more money. We're going to go back and see what we can do to get the others off without sacrificing speed or driver safety. Meanwhile, here is the leader, Jan Lammers, in the turbocharged Jag. Let's go back down to Rick.
Here comes Jan Lammers once again. As he comes into the pit, he is already starting to take his seatbelt off so they can make that change. Price Cobb now getting in the car. Meanwhile, one of the Nissans has come in and is pitting as well. So right now, they are going to be in the drag race situation to see who can get the pit stop done the fastest and get out as well. Once again, changing all 4 tires. They have the tires in the front completed. They are now got the tires in the rear. It's a matter of buttoning up the fender wells, and they're on their way out, except Price Cobb stalls the car. They get it moving. He gets restarted. He's on his way out, but the Nissan is still in the pit.
More than 30 seconds there. This is Chip Robinson now with the Nissan team, and these guys are really slick at pit stops. The Kodak people sponsor a pit stop. Oh, and he pulls away. He pulls away, dragging the fuel hose. And I hope nobody in that pit was hurt. One quick look out his mirrors is going to tell Chip Robinson that he is in a desperate situation here. He is dragging the fuel rig.
This is a situation. I think somebody gave the sign. I think they were signaling to the fueler to pull off the fueling, and mistakenly Chip thought they meant to pull out of the pits. Well, at least he's flung the fuel hose off.
Well, I hope everybody is all right down there in the pits. Chip Robinson pulled away before they had unhooked the fuel hose, and he took the whole rig with him. I'll have to keep monitoring that situation in the Nissan pits. No physical damage to the race car at this point, it would appear, but a bad miscue for a Nissan team that is normally letter perfect in its pit stops.
I think the fuel was taking a lot longer than they expected, and there may have been a fuel flow problem.
There you see one of the Nissan crewmen being taken apparently over to the medical area to wash off what one would assume are some fuel burns. Maybe he got splashed in the eyes. That's going to take some quick work. Meanwhile, all of that confusion in his pit means this guy, Jeff Brabham, has to stay out. And I'm wondering whether Jeff Brabham needs to come in very, very soon. He may be beginning to run low on fuel.
I wonder if they have a second fuel rig in order to fuel that car, because if that first hose, as we saw, was ripped off the fuel cell in the pits, there may be nothing to fuel Jeff with.
Good point. As we look across to the pit area, we can't quite tell whether they have a second fuel rig. I would guess they must have such a thing in there. In case the cars needed to pit together, they needed a certain redundancy in case they needed to fuel both cars. Now here's another look. Ashley Page to the left of your screen. You saw him waving forward. I think he was saying, get done. You're right, Doc. But Chip, and I think rightly so, given the hand gesture from Ashley, pulled out and dragged the fuel with him. Now it looks like Brabham is into the pits. Brabham is pulling up, and they are ready with a replacement fuel rig. Let's go down to Rick de Brule.
That's right. They were ready with the replacement fuel rig. What happened before was they were trying to get Robinson out because they knew that they were going to have Brabham coming in. Devendorf was waving frantically to get them away. A situation where they simply anticipated a little too quick. He started out. The fuel rig was attached, dragged it down the way. The one crew member you saw being taken away because fuel was splashed on him. Brabham now in a situation. They have it filled up. The tires are on. He's back out. But there is some fire on the back. We'll see if it blows out as he goes down pit lane.
That was not your standard location for turbo fire.
Absolutely not. That was an indication that there was a fire in the back of the car. And whether it blew out, well, we don't see it now, so hopefully it is not there. And we have first and second right together.
That's Jeff Brabham, the second place car, and right behind him you saw Jan Lammers trying to put the lap on the second place car. There's the number 85. Now this is the air-cooled Porsche being driven by Bruce Levin, who's been doing this for a long time. A nice leisurely stop for the boys from the Bayside team, and Bruce would probably have it no other way. Something over 50 years of age, Bruce says he's enjoying his racing now, but he's not challenging for many victories. Still, he's out there having a good time. And there Jeff Brabham gets passed by Jan Lammers, and that will put Brabham a lap down, I believe. I say Lammers, I beg your pardon, it's Price Cobb in the car now. Jeff Brabham running second. And we'll have to wait for all of the pit stop scoring to shake out so that we can tell you who exactly is running well. There's Jochen Mass in the number 86 Bayside Porsche to the right of your screen. Price Cobb does him in quickly.
I think they are on the same lap. What happened is the Jaguar didn't have quite as quick a pit stop, and Jeff had opened up a little bit while the Jaguar was in.
That's right. When Price stopped the car, that cost him some time. So it would figure that they are on the same lap now, and in fact our scoring monitor shows that they are. Price Cobb out of Evergreen, Colorado. Wife Lisa and his two daughters certainly watching back in Colorado. His daddy goes to work here at Portland International Raceway, the G.I. Joe's Camel Grand Prix. Now in between Brabham in the Nissan and Price Cobb up ahead in the Jaguar is Jochen Mass, the winner of the 24 Hours this year. And as the action continues, Brabham moves up to pass. We'll let you know how it turns out when we return to the G.I. Joe's Camel Grand Prix in just a moment. Back at Portland International Raceway. This is the championship leading car in the Camel Lights class. Tom Hessert has climbed out. Charles Morgan from Conway, Arkansas will climb in. Hessert trails in series points by 5 points. Now there is the Nissan back in. That is Chip Robinson, I believe, to serve his penalty for the problem they had in the pits. We drove out of the pits dragging his fuel rig. And now he will pay the penalty.
I don't understand this. I think the penalty was enough in what happened to him.
As a result of that, Chip Robinson finds himself fourth in the battle right now. His teammate Jeff Brabham took over the lead with a very quick pit stop, was then passed by Price Cobb in the turbocharged Jaguar. So make your order right now. Price Cobb leading for Jaguar, followed by Jeff Brabham in a Nissan. Willie T. Ribbs sharing with Juan Manuel Fangio in the Toyota. Behind him, Chip Robinson in the second team Nissan. And in fifth place, Ray Colson in the Toyota Group C car.
We may have seen a slight chink in the Nissan armor with that mess up in the pit stop. Because normally what happens is you drop the air jack, and that's the sign to let the guy go. And they had dropped him, and then by waving the fuel away, Chip misunderstood, I'm sure.
I wonder if maybe there wasn't a problem with the valve and the fueler couldn't get unhooked. Meanwhile, you've got a great nose-to-tail battle for the lead here. This is Lammers and Jeff Brabham, Price Cobb. And right behind him, Jeff Brabham is right there. Let's go back to Rick DeBrule in the pits.
We are standing by with Wes Moss's crew chief. We were just about ready to do an interview with him. Don Devendorf has just dragged him off to the side to discuss what has been happening. They had two particular incidents. The first, obviously, as a result of trying to get the Robinson car out as quickly as possible. They had the problem with the fuel line. Then they had a situation where one of their crew members was splashed with fuel as well. Then they had the fire as a result on the second car. The Brabham car really had nothing to do with that original problem. Tried to get in there to talk to him. Don Devendorf is having a quick chat. We'll try and get back with Wes Moss in just a moment.
And we've had a spin in the pit lane. This is Willie T. Ribbs driving the Eagle. This is the newer, developed entirely by the Dan Gurney team, Toyota Eagle number 99. Willie's got a serious problem there. It's going to take a lot more room to do a three-point turn than it did for Willie to snap it around in the first place.
He had started his victory dance a little bit too soon, I think.
It has been a tough row, and this is only Willie's fifth race in a GTP car. Kathleen Hessert is down in that area.
Yes, it's taken them a little bit of time right now. They spun around They're working on the car. They're refueling it. They're working on the tires as well. It took them quite some time to turn around, and everybody's in a roar. No, there is a driver's change going on right now, yes. The driver change is going on. We're waiting to see. Rocky Moran has gotten into the car, and he is the one who has set up this car, so they figure he can take it all the way.
Rocky Moran is a much bigger man than Willie T. And it looked like Rocky having a little trouble getting the belts on at that point. They need to be very loose when you get in. And it looks like Willie, in fact, spun the car under braking to get to his pit stop.
Jeff is just staying all over Price, but I can tell you from past experience, Price is very difficult to pass here. He will use every inch of road plus to keep you behind you.
Boy, a year ago in the Miami Grand Prix, Price Cobb, then driving for Rob Dyson's Porsche team, had a tremendous battle with his present teammate John Nielsen of Jaguar, and Price blocked Nielsen for virtually the entire race to preserve a victory by 4/1000ths of a second, the second closest in IMSA history. And right now he's using all of the racetrack to break the draft and keep Jeff Brabham behind him. Good battle here around the 1.9-mile Portland International Raceway course. A very flat, effectively featureless course. Let's go back down to Rick DeBrule in the pits.
We're standing by with Wes Moss, the crew chief for Chip Robinson. What happened with that particular stop?
Well, they had a mix-up on whether the car was really full. They couldn't see it in the vent hose clearly, and he left early. It was our screw-up.
But there was a second rig to fuel Brabham? There are separate rigs, separate fueling rigs.
Yes. They had a low fire problem, but I don't think it's the problem now.
The situation on the crewman, is he okay?
Yeah, he should be okay.
Wes Moss.
Now here's a replay of what happened, and you see as they tried to clear off the fuel rig, Ashley Page waved Chip out, and as Doc, you mentioned, they dropped the car to the ground, and that's usually the signal that it's okay to leave.
Absolutely. I think they just got eager for Jeff's pit stop, Chip out, and Chip left.
Boy, miraculous. Hopefully nobody hurt very seriously. That was quite a kerfuffle down there in the Nissan pits. And as I started to mention, there is a pit stop competition here in IMSA Racing, sponsored by the Kodak people, and Nissan are the hands-down leader in speed and accuracy of their pit stops. So that's one they're going to feel for a while. And I'm sure no one feels worse about it than Chip Robinson, who is in the car at this moment and simply doing all he can to bring it on around. Meanwhile, teammate Jeff Brabham in the blue and red number 83 car, desperately trying to keep alive the tradition that the winner of the G.I. Joe's Grand Prix at Portland will go on to win the Camel GT Championship. No matter what happens here today, a Nissan driver will go away with the series lead. Brabham has 151 points, Chip Robinson 147. Their nearest pursuer, Price Cobb, who is leading the race right now in that Castrol Jaguar, has 127 points. So as long as one of those Nissans, well, in fact, the Nissan doesn't even need to finish. The most Price can pick up is 20 points, which would tie him with Chip for 147 if Chip scores none today. Either way, a Nissan driver will still lead the Camel GT Championship at the end of the day in Portland. Back live at Portland International Raceway, where Price Cobb in the number 60 Jaguar and Jeff Brabham in the number 83 Nissan are having a tremendous battle for the lead at the G.I. Joe's Camel Grand Prix. Giampiero Bareri in the number 30 Porsche is in the way right now. And in the past couple of trips down the front straightaway, Price Cobb has run Jeff Brabham right out to the wall in an effort to keep him to one side. Let's take a moment now for our mid-race report, brought to you by Volkswagen and the German-engineered Volkswagen dealer near you. Our race summary to date: the leader, Lammers and Cobb. Price Cobb, presently at the keyboard of the number 60 Jaguar, have led since the very start of the race, except for a couple of laps during the pit stops when it was handed over to Nissan. Average speed approaching record proportions here at Portland. We have had no full course cautions whatsoever. There is your leader in the upper right-hand corner. 24 cars started, 22 remain in the race. 6 cars on the lead lap. The most exciting moment, I would have to say, and certainly the most dramatic and fraught with danger, was the pit stop by the number 84 Nissan, driven by Chip Robinson, in which he pulled part of his fuel rig right out of the pits. It came off the car on the lap, but he was brought back in for a black flag penalty. And we just hope everybody is okay down there at the Nissan pits. We are told by Wes Moss, crew chief on the Robinson car, that in fact everybody is fine. Front straightaway action again. At the middle of your picture in the yellow is your leader in the Camel Lights class, Scott Schubat. The Lights class, of course, for non-turbocharged, smaller cars, the maximum of 3 liters displacement. And here is the man who made the entire class come about. Jim Downing, out of Atlanta, Georgia, with his rotary engine Mazda-powered Argo racer, won the class championship for its first 3 years. And there's the 99 car. The Toyota with Rocky Moran at the wheel has gone around at the entrance to the straightaway.
There must be something about that car pirouetting a lot today.
Same problem Willie T had in trying to get the car to a stop in the pits. So they may have some kind of a brake problem or something on that car, not able to bring it to a halt in a straight line. Grabbing at one corner or the other with the brakes, perhaps. Back to Jim Downing in the meantime, and Kathleen Hessert is standing by in the pit lane.
Jim Downing, one of the leaders in the lights. Jim Downing, one of the leaders in the lights. He's cooling off right now as Howard Katz, his teammate in the car. Kind of wild out there.
Yes, it is. We've had cars off on both sides of the track at the same place, and it's a pretty wild GTP race for a change here.
We haven't had a full course yellow, but you were the instigator or the person behind trying to champion a new full course yellow precautionary routine, and that's not happening here. Do you think that's going to hurt as far as safety is concerned?
Well, I think it will when we have a caution. Of course, if the race goes with no caution, it doesn't make any difference. But obviously, it's a safer procedure, and it's a fairer procedure. I'm not sure why they're not adopting it. It might take a little practice to get it right, but I'm pretty sure we're smart enough to do it.
You were picking up speed up there. You've lightened up the car under new regulations. Have you found that that's been an advantage to you?
Yes, Kathleen. We're right down to weight this weekend, as we were at Watkins Glen, and we're just in the game again.
All right, thank you. Jim Downing.
Father of the Camel Lights class and winner of its first 3 championships before last year's title was won by Kathleen's brother, Tom Hessert. And here comes the battle for the overall lead. Price Cobb and Jeff Brabham. And this is a 175-mile-an-hour train, folks. Those guys hardly more than a car length apart when they start weaving back and forth across the racetrack. Price trying to break up that airflow, trying not to give Brabham in the 83 car the benefit of the draft as they go by. Blue flags being waved as slower traffic in front is told to get out of the way. These guys are coming through, and they really have the pedal down.
Jeff's only chance, it appears to me, is to be able to make some kind of move in these turn, twisty part, get ahead of the Jaguar, because he just does not have the straightaway speed in order to handle the Jaguar.
Brabham looks up the inside along the wall. Price moves over, checks that move. Brabham over the blocks at the curb, but not before Price Cobb. Cobb now slides to the inside and then drifts across the racetrack onto the front straightaway. Looks like Jeff might have a jump. Less than a car length apart.
He's sitting up under the tail. That's where you want to be in order to get all the draft.
Yikes.
You see Price looking back and forth in his mirrors, trying to find where he is so he can try and break that draft.
Down underneath Howard Katz driving Jim Downing's machine here in the early going here at Portland. And here's what it looks like from Jeff's perspective. That's Price Cobb's wing right up there. And his gearbox probably not more than 10 feet from Jeff's feet. Let's hear how it's changing his driving style from the tone of the Nissan V6 Turbo as they head onto the back straight. The critical area is going to be down at the far end of the chicane.
You see the Jaguar pulls away down the straightaway.
They approach the front straightaway one more time. Jeff Brabham will try another pass. We'll let you know whether it works when we return to the G.I. Joe's Camel Grand Prix in a moment. And certainly Jeff Brabham in the number 83 Nissan has his work cut out for him. Price Cobb sharing with Jan Lammers. I just love these two driver races. Here's an example of Nissan's success over the years. From 85 to 87 after the introduction of the car, 27 starts, wins 1. 88 to 89 in the last 2 seasons, 16 victories in their last 21 starts, 18 poles in that many races, only DNF 3 times. What a difference a couple of years can make. And all the credit for that goes to Don Devendorf and the Electromotive team, who have really brought this program around under the aegis of Kaz Kasner, the motorsports manager for Nissan. And right now, they are using all of that race car as Jeff Brabham tries to get past Colorado's Price Cobb. Actually, Price is from Texas originally, in the Dallas area, and he likes to say he is Texas tough, and I've got to believe that Jeff Brabham is getting a taste of just how tough Price can be right now.
Jeff looks to be picking up the intensity in the infield. You also notice running right in front of him is the Miller car, and John's been there for a few laps and doesn't seem to be experiencing the same problems or same situations that Bob Wallach had when he was in the car. John's running a good race, fast race.
We mentioned that manufacturer's battle. Nissan leads that right now by 147 points to 122 over Jaguar. Porsche third with 110. Nobody else in the hunt at this point. So it's basically a three-manufacturer battle for the car builders' honors in the Camel GT Series this year. Buick leads Camel Lights by 170 points to 115 over Mazda, with Pontiac at 104 in the Camel Lights class. Once again, Brabham right up on Price Cobb's gearbox.
It appears to me that Jeff is picking up the intensity in the infield portion. He's really putting the pressure on Price, because he can't seem to do anything on the straights. So he's got to do it back there in the twisty bits.
Here's Rick DeBrule.
We're standing by with Kaz Kastner, Nissan's motorsports manager. What is this battle doing to Jeff's lap time?
Well, he's about 2 to 3 seconds a lap slower than what he can turn at the moment. He was having more than a struggle to get by down the straight. And he jumps off this corner pretty good, and he's right exactly on the back of the Jag, and he just, Jan is managing to make a very, very wide car.
So it's a simple case of blocking at this point?
Well, it's a very wide car.
Kaz Kastner.
Well, if Kaz thinks that's Jan Lammers in the car, I certainly feel a lot better about misidentifying Price Cobb all afternoon. Lammers started it. Price Cobb has held it up, and they lead as they have from the very beginning, with the exception of a couple of laps during the pit stops. Jeff Brabham tried the inside there, and I think Brabham thinks, as you do, Doc, he's got to get him in the twisty parts here. And Jeff Brabham is not afraid to put a shoulder into somebody if he has to. Just ask John Nielsen, to whom he did it at Lime Rock a year ago on Memorial Day weekend.
Well, what tends to cause that situation to happen is constantly being blocked or being held up, and you just get frustrated. And I'll tell you, Jeff is one frustrated guy right now.
Here is Scott Schubot with clear sailing right now in the Camel Lights class in V6 Buick-powered Spice. This lady, Linda Ludeman, sitting on the pit wall watching Scott make his way around. Crew Chief Phil Creighton and the boys have done a great job keeping this car in the hunt. As we mentioned, when they're not winning, they are really out of action. Somebody out there mowing the lawn on the infield, one of the Lights cars here at Portland. And Scott Schubot doing really, really well this far today. But Scott is driving with fingers crossed. It has really been very, very difficult for him. As I said, when he's not doing real well, he's doing real poorly. Here's Kathleen Hesser.
Yes, speaking of Scott Schubot, I don't know how much, if at all, he's feeling it out there, but a lot of the Lights drivers are talking about heavy debris on the track. In fact, there was a little bit of concern here in the number 9 pit. Charles Morgan was out there. He thought he had a flat tire, but what it was heavy debris that was hitting from under the car. Big bang, and he went on, said he had a flat tire, so he thought it was going to have to pit, but he pulled around instead. So heavy debris, whether it's making any difference for the P cars, we don't know, but the Lights are feeling it. It's been mentioned by both Jim Downing and the number 9 car.
I remember in the past running here, Bob, of hearing that large bang. And what happens here is you roll up some of the rubber on the tire, and as you go down that back straightaway after the turny bits, that excess rubber flies off and hits the underbody. You swear something big has just happened.
We just saw a piece of it there. You can see big chunks of rubber rolling the outside of the turn. They call it the marbles, and it's building up here at Portland as we continue in the G.I. Joe's Grand Prix. We asked Scott if he hadn't broken this year, whether he would have won all of the Lights races, and how frustrating have been the problems.
Frustrating. Well, we've broken in 5 races, and we've won 4 races out of 9. So when we don't break, we win. Is it frustrating? Well, we've led, I think, every race, and when we, let's see, the last 3 races that we didn't win, we were leading when we broke. So it was real frustrating.
And as as I said, driving with fingers crossed. Scott Schubot hoping that Buick V6 pulls together. I don't know that he has made his pit stop yet, and he is required to stop and change drivers. Linda Ludeman will get into this car, and my guess is the strategy at this point from Phil Creighton is to go as far as he can, build up as big a lead as he can, and then give themselves plenty of time to get Linda into the car and out onto the racetrack with a lead. In Camel Lights, it's Schubot. We'll be back. Track Facts are brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
In the Camel GT Series, we race regardless of the conditions. Here in Portland this weekend, the conditions can change at any time, from bright sunshine to rain. We have a unique situation here with Dunlop. They create their rain tires here at the track, utilizing these templates. In our first example here, you can see from the grooves and the crosscuts, this is for wet conditions. Our second example, the grooves have gotten larger, as have the crosscuts. This is when you might see the umbrella come out. Our third example, the grooves have gotten quite large, as have the crosscuts. This is for standing water, or when you might see the arc come by.
In fact, we expected rain on. We got one of the Nissans off. And Price is off. Those are your leaders. Price, Cobb. No, that is the Toyota. That's the 98 car being driven by Drake Olson. Oh, and there comes a Jaguar. I think there was contact there. I think Drake just got hip checked out into the woods.
I think that might be one in the car right now if they made their pit stop.
So it would be Fangio or Olson in that car, and he took a shot from Chip Robinson in the 84 Nissan. And these guys just went off too. The 79 car being shared by Ferdinand de Lesseps and John Cochran went off. The Toyota back on, but he took a shot there from the second guy on the scene, which was the 61 Jaguar. Now here's a look at what happened. It looks like maybe there was contact. The Toyota kind of got center punched and knocked right over its center of gravity, pushing it off the racetrack. And there goes Chip.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind. Chip's just inside of him, and I don't think he realizes he's there.
And yeah, he just kind of turned straight into him. Oh my.
I don't think anything was intentional there. It just happened. One of those good old racing accidents.
Yeah, one of those, huh? Boy, there are cars going off every which way. Now that's the 98 car. He's off again? No, that's the same incident. No, it is another incident. Okay, we're live, and he's got no right rear tire. That's his problem.
That explains why he's off this time.
That's what I get for looking at my scoring monitor while we're doing replays. My guess is we're going to see a pit stop right here. What do you think, Doc?
Yeah, and I think we'll change a tire on this pit stop. The track is definitely getting slipperier. As the race goes on, as the history of this race, it gets slippery. And I think as we wind down now, we're going to see more and more incidents.
The track was repaved, as we mentioned at the top of the show, under the aegis of Clarence Cagle, who supervised. Ooh, a little hard to stop when it's a tricycle, too. Clarence Cagle from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway came here to supervise the repaving of the track. All the drivers loved it. They might not think so now. Let's hear from Kathleen.
Yes, it's the right rear wheel, obviously, that is absolutely gone. They're changing the tires right now. Other than that, everybody's standing by. They're doing it pretty fast right now. They don't seem to have any other problems, and they're getting going.
That car was running in the 5th position. Well, now they've suddenly got a problem. Got the right rear back on, and away they go. Looks like the bodywork is a little bit loose. They were running at 5th. We'll have to see where they turn up after the pit stop. Your leader is Price, Cobb in the Jaguar, followed by Brabham and Robinson in Nissans. Davy Jones on the normally aspirated XJR9 Jaguar. And behind them, Bob Earl in the Chevy Spice, John Andretti in the Porsche, Jochen Maas in a Porsche, Willie T. Ribbs in the Toyota Eagle, followed by James Adams in a Porsche, Jean-Piero Moretti also in one of the German cars, Kostas Mos and Bruce Levin in a Pontiac and Porsche, respectively. But the battle is right here, up front. Price Cobb out of Colorado against Jeff Brabham from Australia. could be Jim Downing may not be in the Camel Lights class for long. We're hearing rumors that Mazda wants to go GTO racing big time, and the man they want to run their program is Jim Downing from Atlanta, Georgia. Meanwhile, I told you Jeff Brabham was not afraid to put his shoulder into somebody, and he did just a couple of laps ago. He got together with Price Cobb down in the turn 9 area, and here's what it looked like. Watch as they come down through 7 and 8. Brabham will dive down to the inside when Price slides a little bit wide, and just look what happens. Together they go. Around goes Brabham. Almost around goes both Brabham and Price. They both take to the grass.
The Jaguar seems to have better grip in the grass. He gets away.
Well, they can shorten up some turns then. Here's what it looked like from the in-car.
Yeah, I think Jeff knows that other car's up there. He sees, oh, he slowed up slightly for that other car.
And around he goes. Gets it pointed straight.
Yeah, I think that was all unintentional.
Was trying to use the Bayside Porsche to get around. Ironically, it was that same Bayside Porsche with Klaus Ludwig driving that clipped Jeff at the Del Mar finale last year, and he had the biggest shunt of his career going straight on into the concrete in that Nissan. 6 laps remaining here at Portland International Raceway. Brabham still has not gotten by the Jaguar of Price Cobb, and time is rapidly running out.
Again, the Nissan is working excellent in these twisty bits, but not excellent enough in this case in order to get by the Jaguar. We get back to the back straightaway, the Jaguar opens up again.
Meanwhile, the battle continues in Camel Lights as we watch this one. Looking across the pit lane, it looks like Scott Schubert has been signaled to come in and make the pit stop necessary for the driver change, and here he comes. Linda Ludeman waits on the pit wall. Let's see how much actual work they do on the car. They may not need fuel or tires, but it looks like they are going to add fuel. A man comes over the wall. There will be no tires. Out comes the yellow helmeted Schubert. In goes the red helmeted Linda Ludeman. Here's Kathleen at the pit wall.
Yes, Linda's taking some time to now, extra time it seems, to try and get the seat down right. They have to make those changes, obviously, so she can fit into the car the same way Scott does and get her feet down there so she can go as fast or almost as fast as he does. She's getting in. The original intention was that Linda would probably, or what everybody thought, get in under a full course yellow, run a couple laps and come out. That hasn't been the case here, so she's getting in and she's going to drive for a while, and it may be through the end of the race. We'll have to wait and see.
And the end of that race is barely 5 laps away at this point, so they must get her back onto the racetrack. We have not seen the second place car in lights come by. Yes, he comes down the front stretch now. The 63 lights car of Downing and Katz. There you see it to the right of your screen, and they will take the lead. So a long pit stop to get the seat adjusted for Linda Ludeman may have cost them the race. There is Howard Katz in Jim Downing's car. Downing started it. Katz got into it. And now they have assumed the lead on the pit stop. So the pit strategy did not work for Scott Schubert and Linda Ludeman, it would appear. And so we have a dramatic change of the lead in the late running here of the G.I. Joe's Grand Prix in the Camel Lights class.
One of the Toyotas is off pace.
The 98 car that we saw go off track a couple of times, moving very slowly at this point. And these are the leaders. Jaguar, Price Cobb coming through, hoping to make up ground in the points chase. But with Jeff Brabham just behind, even if they should finish in these positions, there would be 20 points for Price Cobb and 15 points for Jeff Brabham. Effectively, Price would gain only 5 points. Presently, he is 24 points in arrears of Brabham in the championship. But even more important than the points will be the victory for Jaguar if they can hold on for about 5 more laps. Brabham not about to give up. Not about to give up is Jeff Brabham, but time is beginning to run very, very low. If he's going to make a pass, he's going to have to do it very soon. There is your Camel Lights leader, and quickly the overall GTP leader goes by. You You may have noticed when Price got into the car, the distinctive red and blue design on his helmet. Price used to wear a completely unmarked helmet. I asked him why he doesn't have a fancy design like a lot of professional drivers. He said, my ego's not that big. I wonder if he's changed his mind. Oh! And just coming out from behind slower traffic, Price almost hooked Jeff Brabham.
His ego might not be that big, but his car sure is.
That is a wide Jaguar out there today. Just ask this guy in the 83 car. Once more, Jeff Brabham comes up behind. Price has shown the willingness to take him all the way out to the wall. So Jeff has to make up his own mind as to whether or not he will challenge Price on the straightaway or perhaps in the turns.
I don't think he has much choice here. As we've seen time and again, the straightaway is the Jaguar's strongest point.
Down the straightaway they come into the turn 9 complex, where they have already met once today by accident, so to speak. And once again, Jeff goes underneath, and he has to lock up the brakes in order to avoid hitting. Now he gets side by side and drives past. And the crowd comes to its feet at Portland. Jeff Brabham has gotten by the Jaguar. And the wheel flap comes flying off of Price's car, and now Brabham becomes the hunted, and Price Cobb is the hunter. He's going to try an outside line into the turn. No, now it's Brabham's turn to block.
It's turnabout now.
Now let's see what that Nissan can do. You heard Cass Kastner say Jeff was turning laps 2 seconds slower than what he is able to. Let's see if that is in fact the case.
But he's got some slower traffic to deal with here right in front of him, the 98 Toyota.
It has been a dramatic weekend of racing here at Portland. In the International Sedan race yesterday, we had contact on the very last lap. Scott Hare muscled his way past leader Dave Jolly to win. And we also had a great race in the GTU Sedan event earlier today. Speaking of the GTU class, we should probably pass along the message. A lot of the folks here in Portland on the Camel GT Series have gotten together to help raise money for 81 GTU champion Lee Mueller, who is awaiting a heart transplant in a Los Angeles hospital. And Jeff Brabham does it just in time. He holds on to take the checkered flag. Here is your leader in Camel Lights with a dramatic inheritance, I'd have to call it, of the lead when Schubert and Ludeman were not able to complete their driver change in time. Howard Katz and Jim Downing will come home the winners in lights. Jeff Brabham, your winner, and dramatically so. It remains to be seen whether for the 12th year in a row the winner at Portland will go on to win the overall Camel GT Championship. We'll be back in a moment. Back live at Portland, Oregon, and upon completion of his victory lap, Jeff Brabham pulls into his pit with his 8th victory in 10 starts on the 1989 Camel GT Series. With a dramatic late race pass after worrying Price Cobb in the turbocharged Jaguar for lap after lap after lap, he finally managed to get by with 1 lap remaining and carried it to the finish. The points leader, Jeff Brabham, is there, and standing by now in our die-hard victory lane is Rick DeBrule.
Well, Jeff Brabham, you get the Big Game Hunter Award of the day. You stalked him all day long until you finally got it.
Well, it was really a tough race. You know, our car was handling better than theirs, but they're just way too quick for us down the straight. And if you're not quick down the straight here, it's really hard to pass. So it came down to the end of the race. It was be a wimp and come second or have a go at it. So I went for it.
You had a few close moments towards the end, off-course excursions.
No, we both got caught in traffic there, and I had to go at him, and he blocked me, and I didn't mean to hit him that time. And we both went off on the grass, and, you know, slicks don't have very good traction on the grass, and it was this. It seemed so slow trying to get back onto the pavement. But, you know, when it came down to the end there, I mean, I just have to have a go at it. I don't get paid to come second.
What move finally got you past?
Well, there was 2 places on the track where I felt I had a good shot, and one was into the right-hander just before the back straightaway, and the other one was just coming onto the pit straightaway here. So, you know, he was blocking, and which I expected. There's nothing wrong with that, but it just meant I had to move him out the way a little bit to get past, and I didn't want to do it till right to the end of the race.
This race win must feel good, considering how hard it was.
Well, it was a great race. I really enjoyed it, and I think we're going to see a lot more races like this for the rest of the year, and I'm looking forward to it.
Jeff Brabham, the victor today in the G.I. Joe Nissan Grand Prix here at Portland International Raceway.
And our Sears Die Hard Winner Circle is brought to you by the Die Hard Battery, now with more power when you need it most. We'll be back to talk with our Camel Lights winner and wrap things up from Portland when we return to Portland, Oregon and Portland International Raceway. Jeff Brabham with a dramatic last lap victory over the Jaguar of Prix. Action continues in the pit lane here at Portland International Raceway. We're ready now with our Sears Die Hard Winner Circle in the Camel Lights class, brought to you by the Die Hard Battery, now with more power when you need it most. Here's Kathleen.
Yes, we've got two very happy Camel Lights leaders or winners here today. Howard, you were the last one in the car. How much of a factor was the Ludeman-Scott Schubot change?
Well, I don't really know, because I was all in the pits and I was out on the track, but you know, we won this race in the pits. This crew did a hell of a job. You know, we just beat everybody on a pit stop and won.
But Jim, you said earlier you were catching up with the Schubot car.
Well, we seemed to be gaining a little bit on him near the end there. I don't know if Scott was getting tired or we were just getting a little stronger. But again, it was a crew. It was Fabian and PJ and Rich and Rick, and they did it for us today.
Well, this is a very happy team here. Both Howard Katz and Jim Downing, their second win in this series. Thank you both.
And thank you, Kathleen. We'll be back with final comments and wrap up our day here at Portland International Raceway. Final scoring from the G.I. Joes.